Biggest questions for Week 12. Next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Heath Cummings, and we're talking about the biggest questions for Week 12. And just in case you're not aware, your schedule is a little different this week. You're going to have to set your lineups a little earlier. We've got 3 games on Thursday afternoon starting at 12:30 with the Cowboys. So make sure you have your lineup set for that. And I've got one big question for the QB position, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I wrote about Patrick Mahomes as a buy low candidate it's going to be in Wednesday's edition of the Fantasy Football Today newsletter. And Heath, I mean, watching that Monday night game, Patrick Mahomes is still playing the quarterback position at a level higher than any other player in the league. I'm comfortable saying that.
Oh, yeah.
He had, I think, 19.7 PPR points or whatever it was. So it wasn't a bad game by any stretch. It should have been a much better game. He's being let down by his wide receivers. He has 19 drops this season. That's the second most in the NFL. He has the most air yards lost to drops. Obviously, should have had an extra, 9 points on Monday night, if not for Marquez Valdes-Scantling dropping a touchdown late. Do you think he's a buy low candidate? Because I kind of think he is, just with slightly better luck, even with a bad receiving core.
I mean, yeah, you're asking the guy that has the box of Mahomes Crunch over one shoulder and Kelsey Crunch over the other. So probably,
are you a Chiefs fan?
Probably the wrong guy to ask. No, I think you framed it the right way. I do believe he is a buy low. I don't believe that's because he's going to start playing better, although he missed a throw or two last night.
It was rainy and windy.
Right. I think he's still playing like a 25 fantasy point per game quarterback, which is about as good as we've got this year. The only guys I would take over him are Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, and that's only because of the wide receiver situation. And it does seem like I received a couple of tweets last night. You guys have to talk about what a bust Patrick Mahomes has been. And so there's some
he's
real
QB 6 in points per game.
Yeah. Some real angst out there amongst the Mahomes managers. I still can't believe anything other than they're going to figure something out that's better than this. I think he's a top 3 quarterback rest of the season. He's a buy low.
All right, let's move on to the running back position, where I think the biggest question, and we've got a handful of injury situations that we're monitoring, but it seems extremely unlikely that Kenneth Walker is going to play this week with that oblique injury. It's kind of unfair for the 68% of people who have Zach Charbonnet rostered in their leagues, because you've been waiting for this moment, and then this moment comes, and they've got a short week against the 49ers, whose defense looks unbelievably good right now. Where are you ranking Zach Charbonnet this week? And is he – I wrote about him as a sell-high candidate because of the schedule. Even if he does get a couple of weeks to be the starter, the schedule is just brutal. San Francisco, at Dallas, at San Francisco, and then versus Philadelphia. That's the next 4 games for the Seahawks. What are your expectations for Zach Charbonnet?
I've got him ranked as a top 15 running back this week. And so I think his role, and we saw it last week, Ken Walker went down in that game. Almost all of the running back touches went to Zach Charbonnet. He was already playing more on passing downs than Ken Walker. He had 6 catches in that game, 15 carries. It is a bad matchup, but I think he can score 15 PPR fantasy points without scoring a touchdown. And we just don't have that many running backs who can do that. So, yeah, if you could sell high, I think once Ken Walker comes back, it's not like Charbonnet is going to keep the role that we're expecting for him this week. But I'm starting him this week where I have him, even though it's a bad matchup.
Yeah, he's a low-end RB2 for me. I'm expecting like 65 to 70% of the snaps for him. I think DJ Dallas will take on some of the passing role that Charbonnet's been dominating lately, but that still should be 12 to 15 carries, 4 to 5 targets, I think is what I'm expecting for Charbonnet. Are you about the same place?
I might be just a little bit higher on both. The targets, I'm right there with you. I actually have him at 16 carries. So just a touch higher.
All right, and then we'll move on to the last question. Wide receiver position. The Jets finally made the QB change. They're going with Tim Boyle. Is this actually good news for Garrett Wilson?
I have a very big concern that both Jets fans and Steelers fans are going to be very disappointed with the changes that happened today. Zach Wilson getting benched and Matt Canada getting fired. I'm more optimistic about the Steelers than the Jets. I'm not entirely sure why Tim Boyle was a backup quarterback in the NFL in the first place. And I don't expect, I think it's more likely that he is worse than Zach Wilson than better than Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the things that I've said over the past couple of seasons, and it really, the Baker Mayfield experience in Carolina really drilled this in my head. Anytime the case for a player is, well, the QB play can't get worse,
Yeah.
look around the NFL. It can always get worse. I do not expect Tim Boyle to be an upgrade on Zach Wilson. I think the best case scenario is it stays steady and Garrett Wilson is still a high upside wide receiver, but a guy who could also have a 15-target game where he catches all 4 catchable passes thrown his way. So he's still a high-end wide receiver, too, with a lot of upside, but there's a lot of risk with Garrett Wilson. Is that where you have him ranked as well?
Yeah. Low-end wide receiver, too. But, yeah, he's got lots of upside, lots of targets. But, man, it could be a 5 for 60 on 12 targets, too.
All right, that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll see you tomorrow.